Hey, so in this video, I'm going to be going through the sailboat exercise, which is a great way to start to uncover issues that you're having in the business, in a department, when you're meeting in a team setting and you're trying to kind of surface some of those things from team members. So the way that it starts out is I use this analogy of the wind in our sails. So we're going to start with some of the positives. What are the things that we have going for us that are wind in our sails, And essentially this is like our strengths or things that are going well, it could be opportunities or timing. So almost think kind of like SWOT analysis, right? What are the strengths and opportunities? What's the wind in our sails? Where do we have momentum? What's going well, right? Could even be like new key hires, team members, just things that are working for us right now. Once we go through and list out a good amount of those, then we're going to ask the question, what are the things that are the anchors that are dragging us down, right? What are the things that are slowing us down, that are keeping us from going twice as fast or twice as big, right? These are the roadblocks. These are the hurdles, the obstacles, the bottlenecks, the things that are getting in our way. And so we're going to start listing those out. Now, one thing I like to do is I will actually start it off by making a joke and listing the name of the owner of the company or the head of that department, right? Just to kind of create the environment to say, like, this is a safe space. Like, let's air out some of the dirty laundry and let's say, like, hey, this guy honestly kind of gets in the way more than he helps. Cool, let's talk about it. Give me specific examples, because that's kind of the next step. So we're going to list out what are all these things, right, on a weekly basis. Other language you can use is like, what's a thorn in our side, right? What are things that we see are going to be an issue, maybe 90 days from now or a year from now, that we know we're going to need to tackle? What are things that we keep kicking the can down the road on, right? So we're going to list out all these issues, right? These anchors, these things that are slowing us down, keeping us from going twice as big or twice as fast. And now we've got what is going to kick off is what I call our issues list or our roots list. This is essentially where we're going to start digging in and we're going to look for common themes here. Okay, so once we have this list, one thing we're going to do is we're going to see, do we contradict anywhere? So do we have any contradictions from where we say, like, this is a strength, but it's also a weakness? Okay, let's get a little bit more clear. So a lot of times you're going to want to ask questions and figure out, like, what do you mean by that? Give me an example. And you might realize, like, oh, okay, like, I hear you say this, but it sounds like what you're really talking about maybe is expectations, not communication. And so we're going to start to elaborate on those. Now, if you're working on this in a team setting, sometimes what I'll do is I'll have people come up and circle, their top 3, because what we want to find are what are the ones that if we solve will have the biggest impact on the organization. And this is where you can also use like a impact and effort matrix to figure out, okay, if we were to solve this, what's the impact on the company? And if we can quantify it financially, we want to do that. So we're going to quantify those issues, and then we're going to start clumping them together into themes or topics. So another illustration I'll use is like a tree. So as we start listing out some of these issues, those are like leaves on the tree, and we want to figure out what leaves are all attached to the same branch. Okay, so that branch is going to become the theme, and then from that branch, we're going to trace it all the way down to what's the root. And this is where we start getting into what I call like the matches and the gasoline, right? There's a difference between the surface level issue and the root cause of the issue. So matches and gasoline basically means when a fire comes up, usually the team is really good at rallying together, putting out the fire. But what often doesn't happen is committing time to devote to the important but non-urgent issues, which are things like figuring out why did the fire start in the first place. And so the analogy I use is we have this fire comes up, everybody rallies, puts out the fire, but we never stop to actually see why were the matches sitting next to the gasoline to begin with. And is there anybody on the team that has matches in their pocket and they're carrying them around? And as we start tracking these issues, is it always the same person that seems to be involved? So that's the matches and the gasoline. We want to look at what's that surface level issue that has a short-term solution, but we also want to get to what's the root cause, that we can kill the root to solve it once and for all so that we never have to deal with this issue again in the future. Because otherwise what happens is we end up just doing this insane cycle where we end up solving the same short-term issues over and over and over again. Okay? So once we get all these issues listed out, we're going to start clumping them into themes. We're going to figure out what's the benefit to solving these, what's the impact, right? And if we can quantify it financially, we definitely want to do that. Because sometimes you may have different players on the team who, to them, this is a big issue, but in the scope of the company, it may not be as big as some of the other issues. And so we just want to create somewhat of an objective scoreboard to say, this issue is costing the team or costing the company this much, right? It has this much impact on us, positive or negative. And so we're going to start tackling the bigger numbers first, okay? So that's how you work through the sailboat exercise. After that, there's a whole other framework in terms of how we go into actually solving these issues. What we really are going to start to do is get into the root cause. So we want to have a process to do that the team is on board with so that everyone knows this is how we solve issues. We identify the short-term issue and the short-term solution. We then identify the root cause. We kill the root. That may turn into a task. It may turn into a project. There's often cascading communication that comes off of there where other parties are involved and need to know what's going on with it. And so there's a little bit of a ripple effect. More than anything, though, we want members on the team to understand the destination and what it is we're trying to solve. That way they're taking responsibility for it and we're not just swooping in and solving their problems for them. This is a great area to incorporate 131, which is what's the one issue we're trying to solve, the root. What are 3 options that we have? We always want to make sure there's 3 because that means we're in a creative mindset. When we get into like black or white, this or this, usually there's a little bit of a constraint on the creativity. So we want to make sure we've got 3 options. And then we want to start to teach our people how to think, not just what to do. And so we want them to come up with which one they think is the best option and why, right? And then we can ask questions and coach them on why did you pick that one? Did you consider this? What about these factors? Did you ask these questions and so forth? Then we can put a plan into place. We can create milestones in terms of, okay, by next week, where will we be on that? And so this all ties into how you run effective execution-based meetings. If you need help with that, I've got another training on how to run your meetings for execution and not meetings just for the sake of meetings, or often what teams do is meetings to compensate for poor communication. So if that's something you're interested in, send me a message and I can send you that training as well. But this is the sailboat exercise, and this is how we uncover the things that are the wind in our sails, as well as the anchors that are below the surface dragging us down.